Alright, so for today's lesson we're going to work on transforming parabolas into a different form. So far we've worked with this general form here, ax squared plus bx plus c. We know how to find the vertex from that, the axis of symmetry, right? We know how to work with that. Well, there's another form, in a lot of ways I think a more useful form, which we call vertex form or standard form, and it looks like this. A times the quantity x minus h squared plus k. Now here's a great thing. hk represents the vertex. So the vertex is built right into that equation, which is really powerful. Now that might look kind of familiar to you if you go back a few lessons, a unit, where we did transformations with the absolute value equation. We had that hk. Remember, that was the vertex of our absolute value function as well. And we learned that h shifts that parent function right or left, right, horizontally. The sign fills backwards, but it shifts it horizontally. Excuse me. And k shifts it vertically, up or down, and the sign matches, it lines up there. Again, this vertex form we're going to be working with today, very useful if you need to graph quadratics, or especially when you need to solve them, which we're going to be doing in future units. Okay, here's a little example type of problem you're going to run into. So it says sketch the graph and then identify some key things. Axis of symmetry, vertex, hey, what's the y-intercept? Now, I don't want you to go sketch these by hand. It's not hard to do, but anytime we need to graph something, I would encourage you, go right to Desmos.com. Now, in the practice quiz today, it's going to say sketch the graph, but it doesn't have a graph on there, so you don't actually need to sketch it. Just identify the key things that they want you to find, okay? So let's see how we can do this. Identify the axis of symmetry, vertex, y-intercept. Well, first of all, remember in our equation, let me just write that. Y equals ax minus h squared plus k. And remember, hk is our vertex. And what would h be? Well, h would give you the equation for the axis of symmetry. So it's really, really easy to do it from this form. So let's see, axis of symmetry. I'll just do AOS there for shorthand. Axis of symmetry, so here's my h. Notice it's a plus here. So what is h? H is actually a -1. I plugged in a -1, that's why my sign changed. That's what I mean the sign fills backwards. So x equals -1 is my axis of symmetry. My vertex is then going to be -1, -4. Notice k is just a -4, so that's my vertex. What's the y-intercept? Well, we actually have to calculate just a little bit on this one. Not bad though. So remember, y-intercept is where x equals 0, right? So let's plug a 0 into this equation, and then we need to figure out what y is. So y equals 2 times, that would just be 1 squared minus 4. Of course, 2 times 1, so 2 minus 4, and y is going to equal -2, it looks like. So that would be the point, 0, -2, and that would be our y-intercept. So again, not bad to work with those. Plug things in, awesome form here, vertex form. How about something like this? Write the equation of the parabola. So they give us a picture, they give us the graph, and they want us to write this equation. Well, let's think about what we know. Notice they gave me a key point here. Hey, that's the vertex, which is hk. So I actually know this value is 3 and this value is 4. Well, that's great. I already know 2 parts of the equation. The only thing I need to figure out is what a is. Well, they also gave me an additional point. That's an x and a y. So I'm going to go plug those in. So I'm going to put a 5 right here, that's my x, and a -4 right here, and then I'm going to solve for what my y is. Can you kind of make sense of that? So let's do that. So -4 equals a times 5 minus 3 squared plus 4. Remember, I just substituted all those values in from this hk they gave me. Again, hk, their vertex, and xy, just another additional point. So let's clean this up. So -4 equals a times, well, 5 minus 3 is 2, squared would be 4, and then plus 4. Okay, so let's subtract this 4 over. So negative 8 equals 4 times a, and then of course divide that 4 over there, and it looks like a equals negative 2. So now we can write the equation. So y equals negative 2, and that makes sense that it's negative because it's opening downward, right? So negative 2 times x minus 3 squared plus 4. Again, where did that 3, 4 come from? HK, I just substituted it right in. Hey, there's your equation, all right? How about something like this? What if we want to take an equation that's in general form, this ax squared plus bx plus c, and we want to write it in vertex form because it's so useful? So what we're going to do for today is we're going to just substitute in, if there's an a, you know what it's going to be like. There's a. A is the same in both equations, a. And then we need to figure out h and k, right? And then I can substitute them in. Well, if I have an equation like this, remember, how do you find the vertex? Well, you use this guy, negative b over 2a. That actually gives you h. And then you substitute that in and you can get k. So that's what we're going to do. So x equals negative b over 2a. So negative 8 over 2 times 2. Of course, that's negative 8 over 4, which equals negative 2. So we just found h equals negative 2, right? That axis of symmetry is our h value. Now I need to plug that in for my x so I can figure out what the y value that goes with it is, and that's going to be my k value. So let's do that. So y equals 2 times negative 2 squared plus 8 times negative 2. Again, I'm just replacing my x's with that negative 2 value I just found, plus 3. Let's see what we get there. So negative 2 squared is 4. Let's see, 8 times negative 2, so that'd be minus 16, plus 3. And now I've got 8 minus 16 plus 3. So 8 minus 16 is negative 8, plus 3 would be negative 5. And so I just found my k value is negative 5. Now let's go ahead and write that equation. So y equals 2. Again, where did I get that from? A and a show up in both. So my a value was 2. So I'm just going to write it out front. X minus h, well, minus the negative 2. So that's going to become plus 2. Then make sure you don't forget your square up there. And then minus, or just add your k, and k in this case is minus, so minus 5. Now I would encourage it, a really good way to check yourself, by the way, if you go graph this guy on Desmos and then graph this, hey, you're going to see that they are the exact same equation. So that's always a good way to kind of verify, help you check things. Alright, I hope you have a great lesson.